What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the Turbo and 2K show. And if this is your first time joining us, my name is Ryan Turbo Jackson. I'm going to be your host this evening. And on the phone, I do have my talented, handsome co-host, Mr. Kyle 2K's Kaler. What is up, brother?
What up? How's it going?
It is going very, very well. Doing a lot better than my fantasy football team, that is for damn sure. Thank goodness
Yeah.
I'm playing a team that sucks a whole lot more than me. Because let's be real, I mean we've got a really close fantasy football top four kind of rounding out, so I want to make sure I keep my seating there, so at least I make the playoffs. But other than that, not too bad of a day. We have one hell of a show planned for you. We are going to talk about some NCAA hoops. We thought about doing this last week, but we thought we'd give it a week to kind of breathe, kind of get all of the introductory tournaments kind of settled, and just kind of let the regular season kind of take hold a little bit. But yeah, if this is your first time joining us, go ahead and drop a message into the chat. I'd love to chat with you, love to introduce you. But 2Ks, got some stuff to do before we jump into this, and I'm really, really, really excited to be making this announcement. If you did see in the Turbo and 2K's group, and if you don't know what the hell that is, the 2K crew is our fan base, and we do have a Facebook group, and there is a link in the chat. Go ahead and jump on there, answer the questions, and I will let you in the group. And we have a really, really cool group over there. But we hit our 100th subscriber today. Actually, it was last night. We are up to 102, I believe, now. And just to make it official, here it is. The message from YouTube Studio, 100 subs, congrats, your channel just hit its first 100 subscribers. Which I'm pretty stoked about, 2Ks. It's kind of one of those first little check marks, it's kind of cool that people are actually digging and watching our shit, so I'm pretty pumped about that. And I did tell everyone that I would give a special shout out to our 100th subscriber, and Terrence Williams, if you are watching, or if you watch the replay on this, thank you very much, my friend. We do appreciate it. But we also, not only for the 100 subscriber on YouTube, we've also hit our 3,000 download of the podcast on the audio side. So if you're watching the replay of this, we do have a audio version to take with you, if you will. So anywhere that you do consume your podcast, just give Turbo and 2Ks a search, and you'll find us on wherever you consume your podcast material. So 2Ks, like we kind of teased a little bit, we are talking some NCAA hoops, and kind of what we're going to do today is going to go down the top 10 as it sits. I did make these slides yesterday, so there could have been some movement between yesterday and today as far as some of the games are concerned, but give you that, and we're going to break down some prospects. And to be honest with you, this was not an easy thing to do, because there isn't a whole lot of literature on, or even stuff on the internet that's even kind of up to date on this. So I think we have our work cut out for us today, 2Ks. What do you say?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And you talk about us really not knowing a whole lot, and kind of a lot of mysteries with the players. You go back to last season when every single year, I think all of us as basketball fans, especially college basketball fans, we look forward to obviously the March Madness tournament, but also the conference tournaments, because it's kind of our first chance to watch a lot of these teams on TV and see them on the primetime hours on all the channels that we get. So that's when we actually get a good feel to figure out some of these kids that, from schools that maybe we don't get to see on ESPN every single night, like your Dukes and your Kentuckys and then your Kansas teams, all the main teams that are always playing, on TV every night. So, yeah, I mean, going into the season, there's a lot of question marks on with some of these teams, and not necessarily knowing the names of these players. I mean, I had to do a lot of reading today to kind of come up with the material.
Yeah, and I was I was exactly the same way when I was putting these lists together. So let's jump into the top 10 here, 2Ks. And right out the gate, I mean, the one thing that jumps out at me is there's 4 Big Ten teams in the top 10. We've got Iowa, Illinois, Wisconsin, and Michigan State. And before anyone ever gets too caught up in these, it's not a preseason top 10, but we all know that this top 10 right now, as it sits 2Ks, is not going to be the same top 10 that we finished the year out with. Heading into the tournament, there's going to be some moves, there's going to be some shakes. And quite frankly, we all know if you follow college basketball at all, you know the Big Ten is going to beat the shit out of each other. So this list is not going to be the same as it sits right now as it will end the season. There's going to be, hell, what was it? Was it last year or the year before that we saw so many number one teams go? The fall. I mean, it seemed like seemed like every other week we had a number one team fall. And so this list is going to be very fluid. I mean, you could it's a good starting point, let's say there. But as far as any gauge of what's going to happen or what's going on, to me, it's kind of trivial. I mean, I don't know. I guess it's not trivial to put this list together, but it is trivial to put any weight into it. Especially, like you said, especially with the Big Ten. It doesn't matter if it's football, basketball, whatever. The Big Ten normally does beat the shit out of each other. It's just the way it happens. And if you consume any Big Ten basketball, you see that they're probably one of the most physical teams or physical games that anyone could even hope for. And I like watching the Big Ten play basketball because of that. They do seem to be a little bit more aggressive. There seems to be a little bit more defense played. You're really not going to see any scores in the 70s or 80s. Usually it's around the 50s and 60s. So there is some defense that is actually played in basketball, which is rather enjoyable in my opinion. Like I said, you could take that whichever way you want, but just kind of looking at the list, 2Ks. What's the first thing that jumps out at your mind? Taking a quick glance at this list.
You talking about the whole list in general, as far as all of basketball, or just with the Big Ten?
Just the top 10 slide that I sent you.
Top 10.
What's the first thing that jumps out at you?
Well, like you said, all the teams from the Big Ten being there. Obviously, you're probably not going to be able to keep all those teams in that top 10 just because of, eventually they're all going to start playing against each other, and it's going to be kind of the same thing that happens every year where they beat up on each other.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, for me, the first thing that kind of pops up is some of these teams that we don't necessarily talk about a whole lot. Creighton at number 9, Houston at number 10.
Mm-hmm.
Going into the season, don't really know anything about either one of those teams. So to see them, and obviously the respect that they're getting, having them in the top 10 at this point, I'm curious to watch some of their games.
Yeah, and once we the prospect slide is gonna kind of help solidify this top 10 slide, because you're going to see a lot of the prospects listed on this list that are parts of these teams. So, but I did watch the Baylor Illinois game the other night, and for the first half was a fantastic game. And second half, Illinois kind of shit the bed, and Baylor just took over. So I'm pretty sure the number one consensus team with everyone is Gonzaga, and we've seen kind of Gonzaga in the past pretty much break my brackets every time that they're even close to the top or even close to a number one seed, because it seems like I always pick them to go the wrong way. Either they make a really deep run and I pick them to lose in the first or second round, or I pick them to go deep and they lose in the first or second round. So it's kind of for me, historically, especially when it comes to brackets, they're kind of a dick tease. But this year, I mean, they're the consensus. I want to say Baylor got some of the top 10 votes, but when it comes mostly to the top 10, I mean, it's drastic. It seems like the Baylor and Gonzaga are garnering the most attention, let's say, and rightfully so. So far, so good. I mean, they are just demolishing whoever they're looking at. But you have your traditional Duke team in here, which for Coach K not to have a team in kind of the preseason top 10 is very unusual. But you don't see a Kentucky team. You don't see a North Carolina team that are traditionally, like your blue bloods that are always in here. So with them being gone, you're right. It does give teams a chance to kind of make a name for themselves in the top 10, like Creighton, like Houston, and even further up with Gonzaga and stuff like that. But it is kind of it's always weird to see Calipari team not in here, a North Carolina team not in here, but North Carolina especially had a very down year last year. I think it was one of the worst seasons they've had, or one of the worst seasons they've had in a while. Coach K does have Calipari has reloaded with freshmen as he always does. So we'll see. I have a feeling that especially that Kentucky team will be sniffing this top 10 before the season's over. But
Yeah, I mean, Kentucky's looked like you can definitely see the age with that team when you're watching them right now, and that's what you normally get when you have they reload every year with all these very very talented freshmen. So always have 3 or 4 of the best freshmen in the nation coming there, but normally it takes time. I mean, that's the thing with college basketball is you're not going to see teams run the table and go undefeated. They're going to take their blows. They're going to get beat. So these teams, you're never okay with losing, but if you're going to lose some games, you want to lose them at the beginning of the season, and then start to build stride and take that into the postseason. As the season goes on, it's a long season. Obviously, things are a lot different this year too with everything going on. So yeah, I agree with you. They're going to be a team that come tournament time, they will probably be playing their best basketball, like every Calipari team that we've watched over the years.
Oh, for sure. And I have a feeling that we're going to see maybe not in the top 10, but definitely in the top 25. I expect to see a Michigan team in here. Juwan Howard has those boys playing very very well. And again, they're still adapting to his system. So I have a feeling as the season goes along that you're going to see them make their way up. So yet again, another Big Ten team creeping into that top 15, top 10 realm. And to be honest with you, if it's possible for a Coach K Duke team to be kind of under the radar, you haven't really heard a lot about him. He's just plugging along, doing his thing. I'm pretty sure in the prospects there isn't even a Duke prospect on the top prospect sheet, which is kind of weird too. Because usually he's got a top 5 lottery pick somewhere stashed on either on
2 or 3 of them.
Yeah, and he's quietly doing what Coach K does, and yeah, it's kind of weird to see. But like I said, this is the first real kind of top 10 list. We will see some moves. We will see some shakes out of this, and I will be willing to bet pretty much a whole paycheck that this will not be what it looks like at the end of the year. So,
no.
But let's we can go back and forth between the list here, 2Ks. But I do want to show the prospect list here, and maybe if I hit the right button, there we go. And I'll tell you what, the number 1 guy on here, Luke Garza. I mean, he is just tearing shit up. And it's one of the reasons why Iowa's ranked as high as they are, because this dude is legit. And aside from that, if you take a look, I'll go we'll go down these for sure, but what kind of struck me when I was putting this list together, 2K, is weird is it's not your freshman laden list. I mean, yes, there's a couple freshmen, but there's a lot of upperclassmen in this list that you rewind 3 or 4 years ago, there were hardly any juniors and seniors. They were all basically freshmen. So I'm not sure if that's kind of the way things are going. Dudes are hanging out longer or what's going on. But when I was putting this list together, that's what jumped out at me initially. But when I sent this over to 2Ks, what kind of jumped off the page at you?
First right off the bat, Luke Garza. I mean, obviously being the Big Ten fan that I am, was being a Big Ten Michigan fan, but not only just a Michigan fan, also I'm a fan of a lot of these. I always root for the Big Ten, especially when it comes tournament time. So I've been fortunate enough to watch a lot of Garza play. And just the jump that he made last year from the sophomore season, it was just he does everything. He does everything well. He even can step out on the perimeter and knock down that perimeter three. But then he rebounds the ball. He's not afraid to get in there and do a lot of the dirty work that nobody else wants to do. I think it's pretty safe to say at this point right now he's hands down the best player in the nation.
Yeah, and to me, he kind of, for lack of better terms, he does a very good job representing what the Big Ten is all about: hard work,
Absolutely,
getting on the floor, getting those loose balls, and and again, like I said, he's a senior. He has all this experience under his belt. He's not a freshman, and I have a feeling that going forward with the fingers crossed that there is a tournament this year. But I think he's going to help propel that Iowa team to. And I can't remember the last time Iowa made like a good push in the NCAA tournament, but this could be the first time, at least that I can remember, that he gives them a legit shot to not only win the Big Ten, but to make a very, very far run in the tournament.
Absolutely.
And if you look at number two, I'm gonna butcher his name, and I watched it, like I said, the Illinois game the other night. Ayo Dusamoa, I completely apologize, but yet again a junior from Illinois, and he had an off game against Baylor, and I think that might have been one of the reasons why kind of the wheels fell off, for lack of better terms, in the second half. He was, but then again, it could be Baylor just locking him down, and whichever reason it was, I mean, they Baylor just ran away from him, and again, it was like a 2v5 game, so anything could have happened. It's early in the year, and that's kind of one of the reasons why we wanted to wait a little bit for this list, is to kind of let the dust to settle for a little bit. I mean, granted, yes, it's only the second or third week that the NCAA has been doing their thing, but it's always so hard to tell at the beginning of the year when they're doing all these tournaments and tournament invites, and with everything going on, there's a lot of teams that declined the tournament invites, so we didn't get to see them in these normal tournaments. But yeah, he did nothing. He was, you could tell he had an off game then. But
yeah,
the name
a lot of that credit goes to Baylor defense. I mean, it's probably one of the best defenses in the nation. I know a lot of, just from my eye test and some of the games that I've watched this year, that's the best defense I've seen played. Because Illinois is a very good offensive team, and in the second half of that basketball game, it was an offense that looked lost.
Yes, it did.
And the credit goes to the Baylor defense.
Yeah, and like I said, it was. And for those of you that watch the game, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But at number 3, Cade Cunningham, he is the one that's kind of catching the eye of everybody. Mm-hmm. He's a freshman forward from Oklahoma State. And a lot of people are looking at this guy as a number 1 pick in the draft, and to me, I think he could have picked wherever he wanted to play, and why he chose Oklahoma State, I'm not really sure. But yeah, this I've watched a half. I can't remember who they were playing. I watched a half, and yeah, this kid's legit. This kid is legit. He's got the size. He's very tall for a freshman. He is going to fill out because, like I said, he is a freshman. But he has all the intangibles. He's a good shooter. He can drive. He can bang around with the bigs a little bit. He can rebound. He can run the floor well. So if this is your first time hearing of Mr. Cade Cunningham, and you are an NCAA fan, you're going to be hearing his name for the rest of the year. Hands down. I mean, this kid's probably one of the best prospects in this list. Obviously, that's why he's listed number 3. But as far as what I'm hearing from a lot of folks is that, like I said, he is, I'm not going to say the unanimous number 1 selection, but he's very highly, he's going to be very sought after for that number 1 spot. So again, it'll depend on who gets that pick, but yes, you will. This is not the last time you will be hearing of Mr. Cunningham. That is for sure. Number 4 on the list, Jared Butler, junior guard from Butler. Be the first to admit I didn't know a whole lot about him. But yeah, it seems like Butler always has one of those guys. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, shooter. Like I said, he's a junior again, reaffirming that the non-freshmen that are listed on this list. But Butler always seems to have that guard that can shoot the lights out from everywhere. Just a quiet guy, does his thing, doesn't gather too much attention, and it seems like Mr. Butler kind of fits that mold quite well. And number 5, Mr. Remy Martin. And no, we're not talking about the booze. We're talking about the senior guard from Arizona State. Actually, if you follow NCAA basketball, you've been hearing about this kid for at least the last couple years. Very, very, very dynamic player. Again, kind of playing out nowhere in Arizona State, but yeah, if I pretty sure 2Ks. I guarantee I heard of him last year, but like I said, he's definitely increased his stock now that he's at number 5. So as far as the top 5 are concerned, 2Ks, let's split the list in half. I know I've been kind of rambling a lot about a lot of these guys, but do you have any takes on any of them?
No, not a whole lot. It's so early in the season. Haven't really watched a whole lot of these guys. Yeah, obviously Remy Martin. I can remember watching some of him last year.
Especially with a name like that, it just sticks out. I mean,
yeah,
it's not like John Smith.
Yeah, I did watch some of Oklahoma State. One of their games last week with Cade Cunningham. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to upside of any of these players on this list, I think he's a freshman. We haven't seen the best of him yet, but the upside with the kid, I mean, he's going to be something special for sure.
Yeah, I 100% agree there.
But going back to Garza, I mean, he's hands down right now the best player in the nation, but he's a senior. I mean, so obviously we're gonna lean towards the seniors at the beginning of the season because we've watched what he can do. You know, he's an All-American last year, so we've seen what he can do. And I actually, as a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that he's the only All-American from last year on this top 10 list. So.
And as Michael Jordan would say, the ceiling is the roof for him.
Yep.
But no, you're 100% right. Like I said, he pretty much embodies what the Big Ten basketball kind of aura is. He's that pounder, work hard. Like I said, get on the floor to get that rebound and just do his thing. And he's an amazing shooter for just kind of bring that.
He's so efficient. He's so efficient. You look at his first 3 games, and I think it's something like he scored 28, 41, and 35, I believe, are like his 3 totals. But he's also shooting. I mean, he's scoring at over 80%, pace. So he's so efficient with his game. Which I get it. He's a big, and obviously a lot of his points are coming from underneath the basket. But still, he pulls down. If you don't watch him, if you haven't watched him before, he comes out on the perimeter and he can knock down that 3, or he can step inside the 3-point line and knock down that shot with consistency. And so, when you have a big that is as efficient as him, and then also rebounds the ball, and he's a good passer. He's a good passer for a big too. So there's just a lot of things to like with the kid. He's going to be a good player. He's going to be a good player at the next level also.
Yeah, I can't argue that one bit. Can't argue at all. For those of you in the chat, if you are finding this entertaining, you want to put your 2 cents on any of these players or the top 10, go ahead and throw it in the chat. We'd love to get a conversation going, and give us a like, give a subscribe. It would mean the world to us. But yeah, getting on to the bottom of this top 10 list, I kind of teased on it a little bit. B.J. Butler, freshman forward from Kentucky. We like we said, Calipari reloads with obviously, I guarantee a top 5 recruiting class. It seems like he always has a couple hot shot freshmen that just, like you said, need to get time to work together, get to know each other, be a team. Because he usually, for every blue chipper he brings in, he's putting another one in the NBA. So a lot of these guys are not hanging out for any amount of time to actually gain that kind of cohesiveness at the beginning of camp and like you said, with everything going on, it hasn't been the normal, you know, the normal training camp and anything for any of these players. So even though Coach Cal is not in the top 10 right now, I have a feeling that will change towards the end of the year. But going to be led by B.J. Butler. I did catch a little bit of this kid the other night. He is legit. But kind of like you brought up, that Coach Cal teams always usually start off slow. They usually take if they do take an L, it's going to be at the beginning of the year while they're trying to work out the chemistry and the bugs of everything. So, yeah, not surprising that it's not a not a huge deal that his team is not on that front page. But if you haven't had a chance to watch Mr. Butler play, I highly recommend it. And kind of like I alluded to with some of the teams on that top 10 list that normally aren't there, Marcus Zagarowski, I think I nailed that one, junior guard from Creighton, and I think he's one of the main factors and one of the reasons why they are ranked number 9 on the list. So I have not got to see this dude play yet. I have not caught any of Creighton's games, but I have a feel from what I read of him. He, again, senior guard, kind of you're seeing this pattern as we go down here. Not a lot of freshmen, but he's a senior, long in the tooth, as they say. But did a little reading on him, and yes, he's a very, very efficient guard, and I'm hoping to catch one of his games so I can actually get a little bit more lowdown on him, because especially as a senior, it's kind of usually when you do watch these games, they kind of give you, I'm not going to say a before and after, but there's usually always a comparison, or they give you kind of like a time lapse of how they've progressed through their career. And since he's a senior and I haven't watched him, I'm kind of curious to see when I do catch a Creighton game, hopefully they do give that to me. Because, like I said, he's one of the unknowns on here, for me anyway. Number 8.
I can remember watching a little bit of Zagarowski last season. As their point guard, he just runs the show. Very doesn't turn the ball over, doesn't make a lot of mistakes. Not kind of kid that's gonna, like some of these other kids on the list that might average well over 20 points. He's going to be more of a average around 10, 12 points a game, but he takes care of the basketball and obviously probably puts up 7-8 assists a game. That's the point guard,
right?
Not necessarily the scorer like a lot of these kids that are on this list.
Yeah, and that's in this day and age, it kind of goes. I'm not going to say unseen, but it does definitely go under the radar, because everybody's looking for that like a Russell Westbrook type point guard where they can distribute, rebound, and of course attack the basket and be a prolific scorer. And let's just be honest, there aren't too many of those guys walking around the streets that are like that. So to see kind of a point, kind of an old school point guard, I guess you could say, where he distributes more than he looks to score. To me, I like to see that. To me, the point guard is not as of an importance of a scorer as, let's say, a shooting guard, or where everything's going with stretch fours and stuff like that. To me, those guys are more important to be scorers, and I would like my point guard to be it's kind of cliche to say, but the quarterback on the floor. So to me, that's not a huge deal. I like watching I like watching players like that. So definitely looking forward to catching some more of his games, and the way Villanova's played the last the last handful of years, I guarantee we'll get to see him on TV at least more than once. Mm-hmm. And another Big Ten player at number 9, Trace Jackson. I did catch part of a game the other night, and quite impressed with this. Granted, we share a last name, so we have a kinship, I guess you could say. But I was very, very impressed with this kid, and for him to be number 9 on the list just kind of makes me wonder some of the guys I have not watched. Makes me a lot more curious to kind of dive in and kind of see what kind of players they are. Because like I said, I haven't watched a whole lot of Mr. Jackson, but from what I've seen, I'm very impressed. Have you been able to catch any of his games?
Yeah, I watched them. There was a game earlier in the season. They just blew a team away. I cannot remember who it was. And then I watched them. I believe it was Tuesday night. This past Tuesday night, and they played against Texas, and they just got. They were just destroyed. They looked horrible. To kind of try to get any bit of an idea of Trace Jackson, he was the best player on the floor for Indiana, but that night that wasn't really saying a whole lot.
Right.
Texas just destroyed them that night, and Indiana only scored. They only ended up scoring 44 points in the game, so it was just an off night for them. But
right.
Obviously with as much Big Ten basketball as we watch, we'll be able to see a lot of games from this kid.
Oh yeah. Excuse me. Anytime I can watch Indiana play. I love their warm-up pants. So I'm always a fan of those. So, yeah, bring on more Indiana. Bring on more Big Ten football or Big Ten basketball. I love all of it. And to round out the top 10, Sam Hauser, senior from Florida or forward from Virginia. I watched most of the Virginia game the other day where I can't remember the team they were playing, but it should have been just a walk in the park, and Virginia got upset, which is not common for that team. They're usually extremely solid, and if I'm not mistaken, correct me if I'm wrong, 2Ks, because there wasn't a tournament last year. They're the defending champion, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
So and it was a loss at home, which is very, very unusual for this team. First of all, they don't lose at home hardly at all, but for an unranked, very, very, like I said, I should have did a little bit more homework on this, but a team they should have blown out of the gym, but for whatever reason, they let them hang around, and I want to say they lost by 4 or something. The team they played went on like a 7 or 8 run to end the game, and it is what it is. And like you said, though, if you're going to take a loss, you might as well take a loss at the beginning of the year, kind of get it out of the way. And
Tony Bennett, the coach there for Virginia, he's proven here in the last few years that he's one of the best in the biz. And I mean, obviously, with the loss, it's early in the season. These teams haven't even really figured out their identity yet. They're still in the process. Every team's still in the process of doing that. And with what Bennett has done here, and just in these recent years, I think they're going to be okay. They'll get it figured out.
Oh yeah.
The one thing that Virginia always does really well, ever since he's been the coach there, is they play some of the best defense in the nation. And but unfortunately, with some of their really good defensive players that they've had over the years, they sometimes struggle to score. So
yes.
If you have an off night and you're not able to score very many points, it's easy for you to be upset.
Yeah, and they brought in he's either junior or senior. He was a transfer in, and he brought because that was their big thing last year, is they could hold opponents on around like 65 points, but they were scoring like 68 on average. So when you're dealing with that small of a margin, I mean you're gonna get caught. It's gonna nip you in the butt, and it just so happened that on that night it did nip him in the butt. But you're right, the coach there is way, way, way too good to let this any sort of bad juju kind of hang out with this team. I mean, like you said, the bread and butter is their defense. They'll get everything back on track. I'm not at all worried about that at all. But
and actually, we're going to be able to. That's one of the best games this week. ACC Big Ten Challenge starting off, and we're going to be on Wednesday night. It's Virginia and Michigan State, so that'll be.
Ooh, yes.
Should be a very good game. Michigan State looked. They did. I mean, obviously they had the win earlier in the week against Duke, which was a huge win for them. Yeah, then they kind of scuffled a little bit. They scuffled a little bit against Detroit Mercy. Didn't look like the same Michigan State team that we'd watched, in the first 3 games of the season. But they still ended up coming up with the win. And then I saw it tonight. They won pretty easily against Western Michigan. But It's your typical Tom Izzo team. They're going to be there. They're going to be, they're going to be relevant all season long. They're going to make a run. They'll be right there in the thick of things to win the Big Ten, and they'll be right there to have a chance at winning it all. You can count Michigan State to be relevant and be in the picture every single year.
And I know that pains you to say because you're the biggest Tom Izzo fan on the planet. So
such a fucking crybaby.
Well, you kind of mentioned it, that big win at Duke, and I was actually shocked to see that was Izzo's first win ever at Cameron Indoor. So, and that to me, one of the things.
It's a different win though. Can you really count that win when there's no fans?
I was just going down that route because it seems to me, yes, college football, there's a shit ton of fans. What is it? 114,000 at the Big House 2Ks?
Yeah, give or take, yeah.
86 or 89,000 at Notre Dame Stadium after the upgrades. Yeah. There's a lot of people, but you're outside. Now, you take Cameron Indoor with the Cameron Crazies and everything surrounding. I mean, I'll be 100%. Cameron Indoor is one of my sports bucket list is to go watch a Duke game at Cameron Indoor. Am I a Duke fan? Absolutely not. But it's just something I want to go do. I want to experience the Cameron Crazy. And when it comes down to home court advantage and having fans, asses in the seats, I have a feeling that the college basketball has the most. It's gonna take those players, especially the players that have been around, that program for 2 or 3 years. That has to be the biggest change or the biggest adjustment out of any home court. College basketball, college football, even pro football, college basketball, because you're almost right on the court and you're jamming a lot of people in a smaller arena. I guarantee the energy factor is you could cut it with a knife when Duke is on a roll, especially you get Kentucky Duke, the big rivalries, the Tobacco Road rivalry. The vibe in that building when it's rocking, with everyone jammed in that it's not a little tiny arena. I think it holds like 4,000 or 5,000 people, but obviously compared to a football stadium is very, very tiny. So just the electricity in that building, you could probably cut with a fucking knife. And yes, I have a feeling that those players, it's definitely more of a factor. It has to be, just because of the smaller enclosure, and especially a place like Cameron Indoor where, like I said, the kids are just almost right on the floor. That has to be a big advantage.
Absolutely. There's not a home field or a home court advantage, whatever you want to call it, that's bigger than any. College basketball is as big as it gets. I mean, like the advantage that you get of playing on your home floor and having your home crowd there. I mean, it's the biggest advantage in all sports. Absolutely. I mean, and we talk about it every single year, especially talking about the Big Ten in basketball. When they get into conference play, these teams, you're not going to run the table in the Big Ten. You're going to get beat, and you're probably going to get beat multiple times. I mean, even the best teams in the Big Ten are probably going to lose 3, 4, maybe even 5 games.
Conference games for sure.
And so, and you always hear people say it. You always hear the term, you got to protect your home floor. You have to win the games on your home floor, and then you have to win the games that you have to be able to go on the road and beat the if you're in the Big Ten, you're talking about the teams like Northwestern, or in the last few years Minnesota hasn't been very good. So like those teams, you have to go on the road and you have to win those games. But when for me as a Michigan fan, you're going to Michigan State. If you lose that game at Michigan State, I mean, you have to kind of think like, as long as you beat them at your home floor, then you can kind of afford to lose that game, at Michigan State. Obviously, you want to win it, and you're playing to try to win it, but you have to know that you're not going to win them all in the Big Ten. Like you have to be a very, very special team to go through that conference where there's 9, 10, maybe even 11 teams that are going to be playing in the main tournament at the end of the year. So you have to protect your home floor. So absolutely, that home court advantage is a huge deal, and not having fans in the stands this year, I think it's going to change things. I think it's going to change things drastically. And we've seen it in the football. We've seen it with college football this year. That obviously playing on your home field is not as big of a deal as what it would be, in a normal season when we have fans in the stands.
Right. And even with the Big Ten, we're seeing teams like obviously this is Maryland's had kind of I'm not going to say a resurgence year in basketball, but they're more competitive. Rutgers is even more competitive than in years past. But looking at the, I was going to put another fancy slide with the Big Ten standings, but every place I looked had Illinois at the bottom, which didn't make any fucking sense. So I said, all right, whatever. We'll just kind of talk about it. But Rutgers is probably, I'm not going to say, they're not going to be gangbusters by any means, but they're definitely going to be more competitive this year.
Absolutely.
They're
a top 25 team right now.
Yeah. And when you say 10 or 11 out of the Big Ten going to the tournament, absolutely, maybe even towards 12.
I mean, and they were already last season before the tournament was off. They had 10 teams, going into the tournament, and then before it was canceled.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of it is over. It used to be we always talked about the ACC. The ACC was the best conference in basketball, and the ACC maybe if you take the 3 top teams from the ACC and you line them up against the 3 top teams in the Big Ten, you might have a battle there. But when you start talking about a conference from the best team in the conference to the worst team in the conference, it's hands down the Big Ten is by far the best.
Oh, they're by far the deepest. You mentioned the ACC. The ACC has lost UConn. I mean, UConn's went back to the Big East, and there's a lot of folks that are saying that they belonged in the Big East to begin with. But my Notre Dame squad is looking very bad. I'm not stoked to watch them. I know that they've been respectable the last couple years, but it was right when every other sport besides the football team went to the ACC. Notre Dame won the ACC title, made a good run in the NCAA tournament, and they were kind of at the top of the ACC for a couple years, and now it's kind of Coach Bray's got his work to do over there. I'm sure by the end of the year he'll have a competitive team, but as far as kind of making a title run by any means, I don't see it. But yeah, they've had a rough start, and hell, even Muffet McGraw on the ladies' side has kind of had a the ladies have had kind of a slow start as well. So
yeah, I want to get to
actually,
Notre Dame. I think they're going to.
Muffet, I'm pretty sure Muffet retired. This is the first year of the new regime, if I'm not mistaken. So don't hold me to that. But the Notre Dame girls are not the powerhouse like they have been the last few years. Sorry to interrupt there,
but I want to get too bent out of shape over Notre Dame. I think they're going to be all right. Do I think they're going to be a team that obviously battling to win the ACC? No, but they're going to be right there in the thick of things. They're the ACC is a solid conference, so they're going to play a tough schedule. We've only really been able to watch them. I think tonight they're playing right now, and they're beating. Currently they're beating Detroit Mercy. It's only their second game of the season. They played the Michigan State game. Michigan State's a very good basketball team. So to lose that game, that's not really saying anything bad about your team. And then their next 2 games against Western and Tennessee, both of those games were canceled. And then tonight against Detroit Mercy, but then next week they start in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. They'll play against Ohio State, so that'll be a very good game for them. And then they right after that they go Kentucky and Duke. So we're going to get a really good idea of what kind of team this is with that schedule. And then after the Duke game, they play Purdue. So I mean, it's a very, very tough schedule for him. But Mike Bray's a good coach, and with what he has there, and what the players that he can recruit, obviously recruiting at Notre Dame is a challenge upon itself. I mean, you can't just bring in whatever kid you want when you're talking about Notre Dame. So
yeah, you're definitely not getting the one and dones at Notre Dame.
Exactly. You're not doing that. So what Bray has to do is he has to try to recruit kids that are going to not necessarily those 5 stars and not even those 4 stars, but you're trying to recruit those 3 stars. And then it's important to be able to develop those players. And Bray can do that.
Mm-hmm.
He's proven that he can do that. I mean, these Notre Dame teams, he's had some good teams over the years, so he's a very good coach. I want be too worried about him. They'll be a team that will be right there in the thick of things and have an opportunity to play in the tournament at the end of the year.
Yeah, and I think you're 100% right that when it comes to ranking the top 10 like active NCAA coaches, I do think Coach Bray is very underrated. He definitely does not get the credit that he deserves, and hell, I didn't even know he'd been at Notre Dame for as long as he has.
Oh,
So yeah. I mean, he's if I'm not mistaken, it's if not 20 years, right, really close to that. So definitely does not, he as far as like you said with recruiting, it's got to be very difficult, because you're
he's
definitely
been the coach there since 2000. So 20 years, you're right on it.
Yeah, so I to me, maybe it's just 'cause I didn't follow the Notre Dame basketball program as close as I should have as an Irish fan, but yeah, it's got to be in, it has to be something that obviously all Notre Dame coaches have to deal with, is the extra academics with everything. We're seeing Coach Kelly have his extreme success on the football side. Obviously, the aforementioned Muffet McGraw has been. I mean, she's going to walk into the College Basketball Hall of Fame. So, yes, for Coach Bray to do what he does, keeps his team relevant for as long as, and he's made some really deep NCAA tournament runs. So that extra academics has to, and just like I said, you're not going to get a one and done from Notre Dame. Not to say that one and dones are bad. I'm not. Don't put those words in my mouth. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that the likelihood of a one and done player coming from Notre Dame is very, very, very small.
Absolutely.
And you even look at, let's take that statement and unpack it a little bit. How many one and dones do you see from the Big Ten? Not many. Not many. I'm sure there's going to be someone in the comments that's like, well, Turbo, this guy.
I mean, you have them, but it's not like, you can almost count on Duke having, two or three of those guys every year.
Yep.
Same thing with Kentucky. Mm-hmm. Same thing with North Carolina over the years.
Yep.
So those are like every single year you see those guys. But in the Big Ten with most of these teams, Michigan, maybe they'll have one, or Michigan State, maybe they'll have one. But really, when you start talking about Michigan State, and we talk about, everybody always wants to talk about Tom Izzo being the best coach in the Big Ten. And it's hard to argue that. It really is. And obviously, anybody that's listened to me, they know that I'm not an Izzo fan. But it's hard. But I do respect him. Mm-hmm. You have to respect what he's done there and the success that he has had there. And you start thinking about, some of these players that have played for him just recently, just in the last 10 years. And guys that if they were playing at Duke or if they were playing at Kentucky, they would have left. They would have played there 1 year and they would have left. But how many of these guys was Izzo able to keep? That was that's what's always been amazing to me is over the years he's had so many guys that could have obviously left after their freshman season, would have probably been top 10 draft picks. Mm-hmm. And they come back. But he gets somehow, some way, he gets those kids to buy into it, to the team, to the university, to the success, and they buy into it and they come back. And you have to respect him for how he's able to do that.
Well, you take the obviously the most recent one in Cassius Winston.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm curious to see, and if anyone in the chat or in the replay could help me out on this, I'd like to know who actually recruited him. Obviously, Izzo did, and I have a feeling that he wouldn't even have made a Duke team or a Kentucky team or any of the other teams that we had talked about. However, he committed to Michigan State. Granted, went all 4 years. It was drafted. It was drafted. Think about that. A player that obviously never could have been a one and done ever. Mm-hmm. And Izzo in his process or his program developed Winston to be not only one of the best Michigan State players, but to be I don't think he was drafted in the first round. I want to say he was drafted in the second round,
Second round.
and
Yep.
he's since been traded. But that's neither here nor there. But for a kid that needed to stay, even after his junior year, I don't think he would have been a first or second rounder. I really don't. But sticking with the program with Izzo made him a top, a second round draft pick. Will he?
Yeah, Big Ten Player of the Year.
Yeah.
2019 Big Ten Player of the Year. I mean,
had a fantastic resume. Fantastic resume.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the same story kind of flip it around to Michigan. And this has been a few years ago, but when they had Trey Burke there as a point guard, he was a kid that came from Ohio, and at the time Ohio State was really good. That was when Ohio State had Jared Sullinger. I think everybody probably that watches follows college basketball closely. They remember Sullinger being there, and Sullinger and Burke went to the same high school.
I remember that. Yeah,
so they're right there in Columbus, Ohio, and Ohio State did not recruit Burke. They didn't offer him anything. They didn't even recruit him, and they were there watching his high school teammate in Sullinger, but they never even recruited Burke. And Burke ended up signing with Michigan, and had a very solid freshman season there. And you could see a lot of upside with him, and then the development that he made, and then obviously I can sit here and talk about Beeline and the way that he could develop players for hours.
Again, another very underrated coach. Never really got the props he deserved at Michigan by any means.
Yeah, and then Burke comes back for his sophomore season, and not only wins the Big Ten Player of the Year, but wins the National Player of the Year. So it's I mean, you love those stories, and the stories of those kids that aren't necessarily the number one player, the number two player coming out of high school. They're not even talked about. They might only have 2 stars or 3 stars. Everybody wants these 5-star players on their team, but it's all about the work ethic that these kids have and what they're willing to put into it. And so when you see a story like Burke or like Winston, those are the guys that you root for.
I could not agree with you more. And so in the waning moments here of the podcast here, 2Ks, I would like to get your opinion. Let's flip back to this top 10 thing right there. When it comes to the Big Ten, give me how you think the top 3 teams in the Big Ten will finish, 1, 2, and 3.
I think I'm not ready to put. I've watched. Obviously, I'm a Michigan fan. I've watched all their games. I do like them. I think that they weren't really given a whole lot of credit. Look, when you lose, Xavier Simpson, your point guard from last year, and Teskey, your big man, you lose them to graduation, and then you really didn't know what Michigan was going to have coming back. Well, they ended up, with a few of these transfer kids that they've got now, they're a lot deeper. They're a lot better than what I thought they were going to be. Obviously, you got a guy like Isaiah Livers coming back as a senior this year. He at one time had opted out, like he was going to enter the draft, and then kind of just chose to come back kind of at the last minute. And he's been really good. He's averaging over 20 points for him. So there's a lot of things I like about that Michigan team. Juwan Howard has proven that he's not just a big name. He's taken over the job, and he's also a very good coach. He comes from coming kind of from that Miami identity where he's coached with some really, really good coaches before he came to Michigan. So at first when he took the job, I was kind of scared about it. Like, is he really going to be a good coach, or is it just a good name? Yeah, and he's proven that he knows what he's doing. He's a very good coach. So I'm going to put Michigan there. I'm not going to put them on the top. I'm going to put them at number 3.
Okay.
And then number 2, I'm going to have Michigan State. And then number 1, I'm going to have Iowa, and that's because they have the best player in the nation.
Yep. And it's hard to argue with Iowa. It's kind of hard to. I mean, even though on this top 10 list we've got Wisconsin and Illinois in between Iowa and that Michigan State team, but But yeah, I'm I'm pretty much in agreement with you. Getting back to Juwan Howard, I think we both kind of agreed that yes, it's going to be a great hire for Michigan. I have we both thought there was no question in our minds about his would he be a good recruiter, but it was bringing in his system and kind of with the parts that were left over from the Beeline era, how would everything kind of piece together, and I think he's done one hell of a job. Done one
Oh,
hell of a
absolutely.
job. Was it
Hey,
some?
he's got the number one recruiting class coming in
Yeah,
for next year.
yeah, and
Where we stand right now.
yeah, and just to kind of repeat what I just said, you and I both. I mean, we were very high on his recruiting abilities. That was hands down. To me, that was probably going to be the easiest part of this job when it comes to him. But we were both kind of leery to see what kind of system he would bring in. Like I said, how the current players would respond, if they would buy in, and if they did, how they would buy in, and then kind of integrating his recruits into everything, which every new coach has to do. Every new coach has to do, and neither one of us, I think, were kind of expecting gangbusters right out the gate by any means. But you can see the improvement in what he's doing, how the players are buying in, and just the overall just kind of aura of the program again. It's got a lot of people excited. I think maybe because half of it, yes, that the Michigan basketball program is up and running again. It really didn't take a downturn from when Beeline left. Usually there's a 3 or 4 year period where everything's kind of mushy, everything's kind of jello. They're not sure what the hell's gonna go. What the hell's going on. It didn't take any time for those kids to buy into the program. And 2Ks, I have to admit, this might be your saving grace as far as your fandom is concerned, because everything else has gone to shit for you. And at
Yeah.
least you have your Michigan basketball squad. Everything's still kind of up in the air with your Michigan football squad, as far as what's going to go on after this weekend. So at least you have this one shining spot. 2Ks.
That's all I got at this point. This is all I have when it comes to.
I'm extremely happy for you that you do have something to root for. Because I was getting kind of worried there for a little bit. I really was, brother. I really was.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
I didn't know if I was going to have to talk you down from the roof or something, because usually when it comes to your fandom, there's one team that is really, really good. There's one team that's completely shit. And it just so happens that, I mean, granted, your Tigers are very promising. I think they're
starting to make that turn.
Yep.
To make their way up. They're not necessarily digging the hole that they have been here for the last few years. Obviously, getting rid of, waiting on some of these big contracts to leave, getting rid of some of these big contracts.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things to be excited about.
Great head coach in place.
Fan. Yes. So there's a lot of things to be excited about with it. Obviously, we're not there yet, but like I said, we're starting to make. We've made the turn, and we're on the way up to hopefully here in the next couple of years. Hopefully, some playing some postseason ball.
Yep, everything is trending in the right direction. That is for sure. Unlike your Dallas Cowboys, again, they're kind of in an extreme amount of flux right now. And I'm pretty sure
They still got a chance. They still got a chance to win that division, though.
Unfortunately, you're right. And somehow speaking of that division, somehow the Giants beat the fucking Seahawks.
Hey, I was saying, I said it last week when we were talking, that they have the best defense in that division. That's why I think they're going to end up winning it. And not only one of the best defenses in that division, they have one of the best defenses in all of the NFL. No. So they're going to keep them in games. And it's going to come down to whoever's playing quarterback there. Today it was Colt McCoy.
Yeah, I didn't.
If they can just make enough plays, their defense is going to put them in situations to win a lot of games.
Didn't even know that Colt McCoy is still in the league until today. So that was Who knew? Well, 2Ks, we've reached our hour mark, my friend, and I do want to thank I can't really thank each and every one of you, but thank you everyone for keeping the podcast downloading on your podcast software. thank you again for the 100th subscriber. And I'll throw that little graphic up here again. Thank you, everybody. And if you stayed this long, please like, subscribe, and share. It would mean the world to us. And yet again, Mr. Terrence Williams, thank you again for being our 100th subscriber. And like I said, keep the audio downloads rolling. I'm glad everyone is liking the shorts that I'm doing on the channel as well. So keep us ring the little bell if you are a subscriber to let you know when I upload those. And let's keep everything rolling. And we've got everything's getting traction. I love it, 2Ks, and it's kind of cool to have people actually listen to what the fuck we're talking about. Who would ever thought?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if there isn't anything else, my brother, let's get out of here. Anything else you want to bring up?
No, sir.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. We appreciate it. And Jim Rome, as always, we're still coming for you.